Okay, so let's get started. So again, thank you for coming and joining this webinar where we're going to bring you a customer story about Stim, a Codacy customer who's here to share how to make sure your code withstands the test of time. So very quickly, Stim is a collection society of composers, authors, publishers. And then since 1923, they've been working on things like copyright protections, guaranteeing that their members get paid when the music is performed, streamed, or played in public. It's also used in TV and film. So Stim has existed for a century, and they're here to stay. And they're a Codacy customer, and they understand the need to write high-quality code today so that their software developers can easily maintain it in the future. And with me today, I have Tobias Sjösten, head of software engineering at Stim, who's going to talk about this journey firsthand. And also joining the conversation will be Harry Cochran, the team lead of customer success at Codacy. I'm Eloisa. I'm just here to quickly introduce the session. And oh, sorry. Is music randomly playing now?
I hear nothing.
No, all good.
Great. It's a good thing you don't hear it. I just started playing music for some reason. Okay. Hold on. Okay. Sorry, 1 second. We're back. Quick technical glitch. So like I was saying, just a couple of notes before we begin is we'll be recording this session. And so if you happen to miss any of this discussion or you want to revisit, share this story with your team later, you can. And so we'll be sharing a recording with you very soon. And you can always participate in the conversation by using the chat and also the Q&A button here. Feel free to ask any questions that come up throughout this discussion, and we'll be happy to address them near the end. But now I'll just let our speakers introduce themselves, and how should we start?
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Eloisa. As Eloisa's mentioned, I am customer success team lead at Codacy. And I'm very happy to have Tobias with me today. Perhaps, passing it over to you quickly, just to introduce yourself as well, Tobias.
Well, first of all, let me just say that I'm very impressed with your pronunciation of my name. It always gets butchered. So, so I'm the head of software engineering at Stim. Been there for almost 6 years now, and we are, Eloisa covered it all. We've been around for 100 years. It was a good party last year, celebrating that 100-year anniversary. So as you can imagine, we have a lot of legacy code, a lot of old tech that are still running very well, but needs to be maintained. So there's a set of unique challenges around what we are doing. And at the same time, we also collect money to pay to our members, over 100,000 members. And we want to be as price efficient as possible, so cost efficient as possible, so that we can pay our members as much as possible. So those are the big challenges that we are wrestling with.
Yeah, thanks for that background. That's really useful. And I think perhaps that leads us naturally into, one of my first questions, which was going to be, could you tell us a bit more about, why you adopted Codacy initially? I know you've been working with us for a little bit now, but initially, and what were the sort of key pain points perhaps that you were trying to resolve, maybe related to some of that legacy code and technical debt that you were just mentioning?
Yeah, sure. So I think we've been with you guys for 3 years almost, at least now. So so that means that I've been working at Stim for 3 years before that, with my 6 years done. So, and over those 3 years, we kept talking about how we should be testing our code. We should be writing more tests. We should be, better at doing automated testing and unit testing and functional testing. And there were some initiatives. Some people started writing some code in different teams, and it just fizzled out over time. Tests were fragile. We didn't do a very good job of it. And when tests keeps breaking and you can't get forward, you can't progress, then you stop testing. So we wanted to do it. We wanted to do it right, but we weren't able to do it right. So we needed something else, something to change. And looking around, I found Codacy then, 3 years ago. And we decided to give it a go, both as the carrot and the stick for ourselves. So we knew that we needed to push ourselves to write more code, because anything that's painful, if you do it more often, it becomes less painful. It becomes something more natural. So yeah, we established quite strict rules to begin with Codacy. So we automated a lot around our software development lifecycle, so that all new code had to meet a set of criteria in order to be valid, to be merged in. And yeah, Codacy gave us a lot of good tools around that, both to push ourselves to do a better job, but also help us do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you initially adopted Codacy, like when you were looking at your technical debt and your legacy code, did you have any way to measure the quality of that? Or was part of adopting Codacy getting that kind of visibility on, your code base and where you stood at that time?
No, we had no visibility. I mean, so we are around 20 engineers today, broken up into various feature teams and platform teams and infrastructure. So within the different teams have different strengths, and some were really good at it, and they knew exactly what kind of test coverage they had and what kind of issues they might potentially have in their code. But overall, we had no idea. So that was a big black hole. So that was nice to get with Codacy as well, like this overview of where are we doing, what kind of which applications are not doing as good, which teams are not doing as well, where do we need to put our efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I think quite a few of our customers find when they adopt Codacy, the first step is actually just getting like that visibility before you move on to implementing those processes, like you mentioned, around having quality gates to drive those improvements. It's actually like,
sorry, I have to say, but it wasn't without pain though, because like seeing those, we had one application that when we started tracking it, I think it had 55,000 critical issues in it. So all from SQL injections to weird execution of dynamic code and so on. So that was very, very painful to see. But I mean, we had the problems there. So it was time to get out of ostrich mode, basically.
Yeah, it's like the elephant in the room, right? And I guess also perhaps for our listeners, that additional context might be quite helpful in terms of like, could you give us a bit more info about your Git organization, like how many repositories you have, like a bit more context there about the size of your code base?
Sure. So it's quite a wide range. So we have today we have about 190, I think I checked 190 repositories, which are both applications and different toolings and libraries and so on. And actually, like a fun trivia, but the oldest running application that we have in production today was deployed in 1986. So 2 years from now, it's going to celebrate 40 years. So that's a testament to the kind of quality that people were building back then. So that's all kudos to them. But and that's a programming language called RPG. From RPG, we have evolved and we have had many different generations of code into what we have today. So there's a lot to, like the environment that we're working with is very diverse. So we decided quite early that these older systems based on IBM, which is RPG, and another language called Plex, we're not going to measure those. We're going to measure the newer ones, which were also quite diverse with PHP and JavaScript, different JavaScript frameworks, Java, and so on. So we were going to measure those. And we did that both, like we started off everything with tests. So tests that was our gateway drug into the Codacy world. And we started off doing workshops. So we got our hands dirty, like trying out different sections of the code, like what could be tested, how could we test better. And it's with testing, I think it's so interesting that every time you bump into something that's like, we can't test it, this is too hard to test. That is a very good smell that something's wrong with the code. Like you need to refactor it because the architecture needs to change so that whenever you make code so it's easier to test, the code quality also goes up. That's they go hand in hand. So yeah, we started off with a set of workshops where we got practical and looked at specific cases and how to test them. And then we introduced two processes which used Codacy a lot. So one was triage. So today we have everyone is doing triage. So one forenoon or afternoon per week, the team sits down and they look through issues in Codacy. They look through the coverage report, and they look to see and then also we use Dependabot from GitHub. So they look at all these incoming reports of potential errors or potential problems, and they just go do a triage of it. They fix the small issues, they create Jira tickets for the bigger issues, and they check off things that are not actually problems. And then the other one is that we have every second Friday, we do something we call Fixing Friday, where the engineers in the team gets to do whatever they want, basically, related to work. So usually, since we had such a focus on testing and we had all these new tools and everything, a lot of our efforts then went into increasing our test coverage. So those two processes helped a lot with being supported by Codacy as a tool.
Yeah, that's really cool, because it feels like, not only with Codacy's processes helping you, but that, it seems like that's also impacted you culturally as an organization to really take code quality seriously and embed it in your internal processes and reviewing not just Codacy, but other areas of code quality too.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also interesting to note that with all this massive code base that we have, 190 repositories, we couldn't attack it and fix everything at once. So Codacy also gave us the tool to separate new code coming in and the standards that we held that to versus old code and the standards that that was subject to in the past. So that was a division, made it easier to tackle it.
Absolutely. Sorry to interrupt. No, I was going to lead me on to the next talking point, but I was that's really interesting. And I think, as you said, this is one of the common challenges too, right? You've got your legacy code base and your new code, and it's, I would say, somewhat unrealistic to be able to hold them both to the same standards from the situations, the conversations that we have with customers. So I would love to understand how you defined that in Codacy, what kind of standards you were implementing on new versus old code, just to give that additional context and for everybody on the webinar today.
Sure. I think we'll come into more technical details of how we automated this and set everything up later. But so one thing in Codacy is that you can set up so we work a lot with pull requests. So within a pull request, you can say that this change is subject to one separate rule. So we set that up to be 80%. So all new code had to be tested to 80%. And going from 0% testing to 80% testing, that was a challenge. That was tough in the beginning.
Yeah.
But like you were talking about, something happened to the culture with us. Once we got over these obstacles, once we got some testing framework in place and we got comfortable testing, it became easier and easier. So that was a cool change to see.
Yeah, and perhaps with reaching that 80%, for example, as you said, it could be quite a jump. Where were you before in terms of coverage on average? What were you looking at before perhaps using Codacy to drive those improvements and get up to 80%?
Sure. So I think we had around 10 repositories which were tested before. So that was a quite small percentage. And the average of those repositories were about 19%, I think, thereabouts 20. And after just 9 months, I would say something like that, we had that coming up to 63% over 70 repositories. So that was a huge change.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. And I think that's one of the things that's really helpful in Codacy is it gives you that visibility, but also as you've mentioned, through the implementation of quality gates, you can drive those incremental improvements in code quality. So from when we look at those different results, it seems like a massive jump, which it is, but it's actually driving those incremental changes over time to get those results. And perhaps that also leads me on to another question: is when you're looking at that improvement in coverage, Were there any specific features or areas of Codacy which were particularly helpful for you achieving those results and driving? I know we've spoken about the quality gates. Like, is there anything else that's helped your developers sort of test their code better, for example, or understand where to improve their tests?
Yeah, sure. So you mean specifically with coverage?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So with coverage, I feel that we have matured a lot during these past years. That initially it was the right decision for sure to focus on code coverage, and like if you are below 60%, for sure get that percentage up. That's the most important thing. But as you go beyond 60, 70, 80, it becomes less and less important each additional percentage. But then it becomes more interesting, I think, to see instead of how much we're testing, what we're testing. So Codacy now gives us that in. So we have actually removed this this gate, like this 80% requirement since then, because some changes, they are nonsensical to cover with a test, and then it's just, you know, a show for the gallery. So it's not very good. Yeah, so instead the Codacy now gives us the feedback on the change that we're trying to introduce and which lines of code within that change is being covered. So then the developer, we use a framework we called ship, show, check. So for each change, the developer is responsible for deploying it to production, like taking it all the way to production. And each change, the developer decides whether this is something that we just ship, like I'm changing the color of a button, for example. Or if it's something that I want to show my teammates that this change has happened, so they know, you know, how the code base is evolving. Or if it's something that we need to check, like I want to invite my teammates to do code review. And we try to do more checking than showing, more showing than shipping. And like being able to see this change and in regards to how much is being covered in the change has been a game changer, I think, because then it's very easy to see that, okay, this doesn't have a lot of coverage, but you know, we covered the important things, so we're good with that. So let's ship that.
Absolutely, and yeah, as you said, being able to like quickly identify the gaps and understand, you know, where you can quickly add those tests. Okay, that's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that. You know, it sounds like Codacy's been particularly helpful for driving those coverage improvements. One of the other things I wanted to understand is there like other areas of code quality that you've seen Codacy drive a positive impact on. So we've spoke a bit about technical debt and the coverage, but are there other areas that you've seen Codacy particularly helpful in terms of driving, you know, improvements in code quality?
Well, as a side effect, I think. So with this triage that we're doing and this fixing Fridays, we make it very easy to just jump in an application and do some fixes. And we've had some applications that were this type that no one wanted to touch. Like whenever you got a Jira ticket assigned to you to fix this old system, you're like, okay, I'll quit my job rather than fix this up. But having these processes in place where you get a bite-size problem, like fix this problem, fix this formatting, or fix this, adds a test to just, you know, check this thing, then that kind of grew some responsibility and ownership within the teams. So that was very interesting to see how that changed teams from being like, you know, not wanting to touch these repositories with a stick to being like, these are our repositories, they are really good, we are proud of them. So that was cool and unexpected.
Yeah, absolutely. And you referenced having, like, when we were discussing technical debt, quite a high amount of critical severity issues. Is that something that you've been able to reduce, or how have you tackled some of those like higher priority issues and resolving them and removing from your code base?
Yeah, so actually that one repository I mentioned that had 55,000 critical issues.
55, yeah.
I'm hoping to delete that whole repository very soon, at least this year. So we're replacing it. So we had to do that for a series of applications, deciding that these, we're not going to change them, we're going to replace them within a year or two. So they are as they are. but then the other ones for sure, that when you can see that you make progress. So one other thing that I did, well, backing back a bit. So starting out with Codacy 3 years ago, I noticed there were quite a lot of, in Swedish we call it child diseases, like, a product is very new and there are edge cases that had been thought about. That has for sure matured a lot, but in the beginning there were some things that were not present in the product in Codacy. So for example, I had to create my own. I made a little program that fetched data from Codacy and then presented it in a dashboard that I created myself, so that I could get some reporting that was not in the application, which are there now. And now I kind of lost my train of thought here. I don't know where I was going with this. What was the question again?
No worries. We were talking about technical debt and how you've used Codacy to reduce perhaps some of those repos which had higher technical debt, like the ones with the critical severity issues.
So back to that. So with my dashboard then and the reporting that I took out, we could see like week by week how we were progressing with the different applications, different class of applications and different teams. So then you could also see that if a team were down to 80 critical issues and then the next week they were down to 63 criticals and then 47, that kind of snowballed, and they got more and more active into fixing these bugs because they wanted to reach zero. So that was also a very cool effect from using Codacy.
Awesome, that's cool. And perhaps also, I think, something that would be like helpful for other customers and prospects to understand about a bit more is how Codacy integrates into your developers' workflows, because often that is a lot of the time where developers will interact with Codacy. So what we mentioned coverage, what sort of quality gates have you set up within your Git workflow to help you with improving code quality?
Right.
Could you tell us a bit more about that integration?
Yeah, for sure. So one thing is with the quality gates is that we don't allow introducing any critical issues. Like if there's a critical issue already in the application, we take that during our triage sessions, but we don't introduce anything new. That's been like a general approach for our session. I think that's key to being successful with this as well. Gotcha. And as for the workflow, like I mentioned, we work in pull request. So you create a pull request, and we work on GitHub. So we've set up a quite elaborate GitHub Actions pipeline for doing quality checks and static checking and formatting and these kind of things, and then deployment as well. And we really like Terraform within Stim. Like Terraform is a game changer. So with Terraform, if you're not familiar with it, it's a tool that you can write configuration and then you run Terraform, and Terraform takes care of applying the changes needed to reach that configuration. So we use that with the GitHub and a lot of other tools. And we actually wrote our own Terraform provider, which is free and open source. So we can link it somewhere, I'm sure, which allows us so that when we create a new repository with GitHub using a pull request as well, that repository is automatically added to Codacy as a repository there, and all our the settings that we want for each type of repository is applied in Codacy as well. So that's been a very nice way, because then we can just change in one place, like these for JavaScript applications, this is what we want. For Go applications, this is what we want. And then that is automatically applied in Codacy throughout all applications.
Yeah, that's really cool. We love automation, and anything that can help with those processes. We're all for. So that's really interesting to hear about, because there's a few different ways that you could automate that with Codacy. But I'm sure a lot of customers are interested in Terraform too. Like I've definitely heard a lot of our customers using it. So that's great to hear about that use case. And I think, one of the things in this open conversation that I'd like to understand as well is that, has there been like any challenges that you've had with Codacy that you've had to overcome, or like anything that you want to share there?
Well, there's this reporting that I told you about. So initially we couldn't get the reports that we wanted from Codacy, but I've been very happy with the support so far. Like as soon as you send something in, you get some response. Even if it's something that you're not going to take care of right away, it's still, that's on the radar. So that has been very nice to get that feedback, even if the functionality wasn't there, and it took a while. But one other thing that we wrestled with was testing coverage in Go. So in Go, you split your application up in different modules. And if one module doesn't have any testing at all, then that module is excluded from the coverage report. So if you have a huge module and it doesn't have any tests whatsoever, that you can still get 100% coverage in the report. So we had to do a lot of wrestling with the reporting there to get it right. That is, however, fixed now with the Go 1.21, I think, or 1.22, we'll see. But a fix is coming, so you don't have to jump through the same hoops that we did. I think that was just, oh, well, we had some minor differences with the way you lint different projects. So for example, YAML, the YAML linting, with the default YAML linting in Codacy is very, very strict. And I'm sure it's correct and following the standard and everything. we probably don't follow the standard, and we're too lazy to do it. So we disabled that in Codacy, and we made our own linting for YAML instead. But I think nowadays you could probably configure that as well. So, but it's been minor issues like that, and yeah, they've been fixed over time. So.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad they've been resolved, and thanks for sharing a couple more insights for us on that. Part of what we do, and we always try and ensure to do, is that we have very open feedback with our customers, and we understand, like you said, what the issues are, and prioritize and resolve them as soon as possible. And it's also a really important part of how we build our roadmap and the features that we work on is, understanding what's important to our customers. So thanks for being such a vocal one, and always been open to sharing feedback with us.
Of course.
I think another area which would be interesting to talk about is how you've achieved standardization of code quality. So we've mentioned a bit about the quality gates, but how have you used Codacy to help you, I'd say, standardize your approach to code quality within Stim?
I think we handle a lot of that outside of Codacy by with our Codacy provider, the Terraform provider for Codacy. So with that one, we decide a lot as a whole team. So we get together and we have regular meetups, and we talk, minutia at times about how to format our code and how to structure it and so on. And then we make a decision like this is something we want to standardize, and then we implement that in our provider, or it's something that every team are left to their own devices. Usually we opt to standardize it because everyone agrees that this is better than this, so let's go with this. Yeah.
So, for example, with like the linters that you're using, you will agree on a standardized configuration for that specific linter, and then apply it into Codacy.
Yeah, and I think in general, people prefer to have a standard rather than their standard.
Yeah.
If it differs a lot between projects.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that we've been focusing on quite a bit, is enabling and trying to help with that standardization at an organizational level, because it's one thing, measuring code quality and being able to enforce it, but it's also a whole nother challenge to overcome, to standardize it across, your whole organization and all the repos that you're working on.
Yeah, but it's a good discussion to have, and it hasn't been without pain points neither. Like to sit down and have this conversation and walking this tight balance between standardizing for the whole of the organization versus letting teams be autonomous, which we also want. So that's certainly a balance that we have walked, and we have erred in both directions. But it's always good to have that discussion. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just one size fits all, as you said. You might have this baseline standard, but you want to customize things that are not as relevant for a specific repo or for a developer. So, I absolutely understand that. And I guess another thing, like when you're having these conversations around standardization with your developers and having those meetings. Are there any resources you use to help guide how you approach the standardization of the linters or other areas of code quality? Are you using any resources to guide best practice, or is it really just like a conversation between like the stakeholders and developers in the team?
Maybe I'm very happy to have a team where people are like very passionate about coding and really good at coding and
Yeah.
very into it as well. So it's usually enough to mention that we have this problem here, YAML linting, for example. Let's talk about it next week during our team meeting, and then we have our team meeting, and then a lot of people have been diving into the standard and looking up various ways to lint YAML code and so on. And then we can very easily just decide on a standard or decide not to standardize.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's a really good overview of, I think the history of your journey with Codacy, of, why you adopted it and how you've seen, it drives some of these helpful improvements over the course of your time with us. I guess what would also be really cool to understand is like, what's next for you? Like, what are your priorities going to be as a team, and perhaps also related to code quality going into this year and beyond?
Yeah. So, well, one thing is like I mentioned, we have some customized linting and static analysis, which now now either we are able to do it in Codacy or Codacy is able to do it. So and I'm a big fan. I rather delete code than write code. I think that leads to better, more maintainable systems. So I would love to delete those parts of our pipeline and move those controls entirely into Codacy. That would be nice. So instead of doing our own linting and so on, in some parts, YAML again, push that in and configure that into Codacy. That would be one good thing. And another is just keep paying off our technical debt, because that keeps popping out new, although in a smaller rate. So we see the light at the end of the tunnel. So we just keep pushing on, and things are getting better and better and better. But I am also personally very interested in measuring the effects of this, because we all have this implied understanding that increasing code quality, and either by working on issues or by adding more coverage, leads to better code and better outcome. But like, I like to play the devil's advocate, and I would like to measure that. Like, if we can correlate the code quality within different applications and see how that relates to incidents or bugs or things that we catch in the pipeline to measure, to see that there's a correlation if we change it. That would be interesting.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting. Cool. Okay, so I see actually we've got a few questions from the audience, so I can just bring these up, and we can run through a couple of these. So one of them is, with higher levels of code coverage, do you find that developers are less afraid of breaking code since it's getting tested more often?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And definitely in the other direction as well. So that the less code, the less coverage you have, the more people are afraid. And we have some systems today that are so, and I think actually there's two pillars to this. Like, one is that you can use the test coverage and the test suite that you have in order to verify that the application is still working. The other is that if you have a good test framework in place, that has also pushed and driven the architecture of the application so that it is easier to change, so that you can see that you make a change here and it won't affect anything else of the application. So for sure, that's undeniable. So.
Awesome. Cool. And then another one we've got here is, how do you find security issues? They've seen that we've recently announced integrations with SemGrep and Trivy. Are these tools that you're using yet, or your team's using at all?
We use Trivy, actually. Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so, we use the quality controls within Codacy during our triage to handle security issues. So we get a nice list of security issues, and we jump into that once a week.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for that context. So yeah, just also to give a bit of extra light there too. So within Codacy, we capture a number of different categories of issues, and essentially security issues is its own category. So as just referenced, like there's a number of ways that you can view security issues. Like we have a security and risk management dashboard, which will actually break down the number of issues that you've got in your different repositories, specifically security issues, their severity, what categories they're related to. And then you can also view that on a repo level and enforce that. So if you wanted, for example, to set up a quality gate within GitHub, you could review whether or not the PR contains security issues, and if so, block it based off that. So you can really categorize and look at that specifically and tailor the types of issues that you're reviewing in Codacy. Okay, cool. So just moving on to another one. So we've got, I'm not sure if this is for you or for me, but I think it could be for both of us. We could tackle it from both sides. But besides using Codacy as a platform, do you have any code quality training programs to help champion the need to adopt tools like this? So I think.
So I mean,
perhaps,
we did the workshop. We did the workshop, and we do mentorships for our more junior developers to help them get up to speed. But I think that's it as far as formal practices.
Yeah.
Did you have something else to add there?
Yeah, I was going to say, Eloisa, do we have any other programs that our customers or attendees today should be aware of to help with training for code quality, specifically beyond the actual, Codacy platform itself?
Yeah, we have a range of resources, like completely free resources that anyone can access from the Codacy website. So if you visit our website and go to resources, you'll find a variety of not only webinars like this, but white papers about code quality and how that can all be implemented into your development workflow. We are constantly sharing like documents and articles as well. If you watch for I would say watch for the Codacy blog, where new articles come out every week. So this is where we really like to share our best tips on how you can improve code quality within your team, how you can implement a more quality-centered culture, tips for managers, tips for software engineers. So I think you'll find a lot in there.
Awesome. Thanks, Eloisa. And perhaps we can drop a couple of links in the chat there as well to direct people to those resources.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then we've got one final question here. So, and I think this is more related at the moment to Codacy and myself. Have your customers or your business in general felt the impact of high code quality? Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think customers adopt Codacy at different stages in their life cycle and journey of code quality. But I think, as we were sort of referencing before, once you've integrated Codacy, one of the first key things that it helps you do is really understand what the code quality of your organization is. And then another really key impact that Codacy drives and key interaction for our customers and developers is that it allows you to set up these quality gates within your developer workflow with our Git integration. So across GitHub, Bitbucket, and GitLab. And once you set up that integration, essentially you can set rules for what would either fail or pass a pull request. So Codacy is integrated directly into that pull request review. And that's a really key part of how the tool helps drive improvements in code quality, because by defining those rules, you're ensuring that before your developers merge their code, that they're fixing these issues or improving test coverage, as we've discussed today, and reducing technical debt. So by having that integration set up, a lot of our customers, yes, absolutely see improvements in code quality. And a key part of the customer success team and working with, CS is also, we will help, be able to deliver that data to you as a customer so you can see how Codacy is driving impact over time and how the code quality for these repositories are improving over time. And there's also dashboards in Codacy specifically for that. So when you've added a repository to Codacy, you've got a quality evolution chart, and essentially across the key metrics that we measure, that helps you understand over, for example, a 3-month period, how your code quality has been improving for that specific repo.
So I will just add to that a little bit about
absolutely, please.
Something that I've learned throughout this journey is that initially adding like these strict controls that you can't merge unless you fulfill these requirements. That was a great way to get started, and especially I think for junior developers could be good as well. But then as you mature in your testing experience or skills, that can be more of a blocker and more frustrating than it gives benefits. So it could be a nice thing to think of it in different stages, like in one stage one approach fits, in another approach fits, whereas where you give more feedback to the developer, like this is something that you might want to think about, but give autonomy to the developer to decide that for him or herself.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And we've got another question here. And how about for Stim's customers specifically? Like, have your customers experienced benefits of having higher quality code since you've been improving and focusing on the last few years?
It's a good question. I don't have a measurement for that, and we still have incidents. It's not like we've gotten rid of all problems by starting to increase our code coverage. But I can say that the applications that are better covered with tests, they feel easier to change, and we can adapt better to changing requirements. And when we get user feedback that we want to take this in that direction instead, we can more easily change it. So we 1 year ago, actually, we had a panel discussion about modern technology, and one thing that came out from that was that the definition of modern technology is that it's tech that meets today's requirements, and it's changeable easily so that it can meet tomorrow's requirements as well. And getting our code coverage up has for sure helped with that, and that is benefiting our customers today.
Awesome.
Being an engineer, though, I would like to have a specific quantifiable measure for that, but I don't.
Yeah, it's challenging. I guess some of the things we could look at or could consider as like reliability or faster experience, that kind of thing, usability. But
yeah,
as you said,
I think that's what I mentioned as well. I'm interested in looking at correlating these kind of quality metrics with effects.
Absolutely.
So I'll get back to you on that.
Cool. Okay. Have we got any other questions from the audience at all? Any other topics that we haven't covered today that anyone would like to discuss or hear more about?
Well, I think if that's all the questions that we have for today, I'd like to obviously thank you, Tobias and Harry, for such an interesting discussion today and sharing with our audience so many learnings and tips about improving code quality over time. And also, big thanks to everyone in the audience for watching and sharing all these questions with us. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about Codacy, we actually have a product showcase coming up in just a couple of days. You can easily register on our website. I'm going to drop the link here in the chat. Everyone, please feel free to participate and join. This will be a session where we're going to present the latest innovations, what are our plans for 2024, sharing some Codacy updates firsthand with all of you. So if you want to stay tuned for more talks, you can always visit our Twitter and our LinkedIn at Codacy. But I would just let our speakers also say goodbye, and a few last notes from Tobias. Or
good chat, and I just want to finish up saying like good job making an awesome product. I'm very happy, and it's helping us a lot. So kudos.
Thanks, Tobias. Thank you very much for your time, and taking this time to share all these insights and feedback with us. It's been a really cool conversation.
Okay. If that's everything, we'll see you. Hope to see everyone very soon again. Thanks again for coming, Tobias. And have
Thanks
a
for having
lovely
me.
afternoon, everyone, or morning or night, depending on where you are.
Take care, guys.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye bye.